You're probably wondering, why the fuck is he showing off his Christmas tree? I'm not. I'm not, believe you me, I'm not. At the top of a tree, that's what's important. What's at the top of a tree? It would be a good thing if a lot of people put something on their tree, like a Palestine flag. That way, people, when they come in, they see your tree from here on in, up until after you take your tree down next year sometime. They will be reminded about Gaza, especially on Christmas Day. Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day. Because that anybody coming in, the first thing they see is your Christmas tree, right? Obviously, right? That's going to slap them right in the face. So, like it does every year. But this time, they're going to notice what they've never seen before on a Christmas tree. Flag of Palestine. Doesn't have to be two ones that like that. It could be any size. You know, even drawing one out yourself. Even, you know, as long as you got one on a tree, people see it. And especially on Christmas Day, the first thing they're going to think of, obviously, when they see the Palestinian flag is Gaza. And I think that's a good thing. That's a positive thing. A positive thing that people remember. The people of Gaza, especially on Christmas Day. Yeah, I think it's a positive thing. Anyway. There's one or two people might think it's not a positive thing. Yeah, you might get somebody that might come along and say, "Why have you got that on your tree? I don't want to be reminded about that today. This is Christmas." And I would say to somebody like that, yeah, that's all the more reason you should remember those poor souls in Gaza who are being bombed today on Christmas Day. Which they probably will be, I can guarantee you that. Yeah. It's a terrible situation. I've never seen a situation like this in my lifetime before. You know, never. I mean, geez. Even a way back in the 1940s, 30s, and the 40s, it was the Jews in Europe. And of course, people away back in those days, all they had was a radio and newspapers. And obviously their government would talk to them over the radio. And maybe not so much in newspapers, but you'll get other people saying things in newspapers. But the Holocaust was never mentioned. Nobody knew about it. The governments knew about it. The British government knew about it. But they don't tell anybody. They only told the British government knew about it first. Then they phoned up the American president and told him. He didn't tell any American people either about it. They didn't say nothing because they were Zionists. See? They were Zionists. Yeah. So nobody knew about it until afterwards. And that's when it all came out. But I dare say if everybody away back then did know about it, I dare say, I don't know what they would have put on their Christmas tree. because they would know they wouldn't be able to do anything either. Bringing down your, especially today, trying to bring down your government today is not like, you know, and you're never going to be able to do that in Britain anyway. You're never going to be able to do that. There's no chance that you're ever going to be able to do that in Britain. Not a hope in hell. We're going to be able to bring down a government that supports such a dreadful, horrific, what can you call it? It is that bad. It is that bad. I've got tons of Arab friends on Facebook. I see a lot of videos. A lot. More videos than I would see if I didn't have, you know, all those Arabs on my friends list. And it's horrible to think that Netanyahu's never going to get prosecuted. Nothing's ever going to happen to him. Or any of the IDF who've been doing a lot of hideous crimes over a 75-year period, let alone what's going on now. It's hard to believe that the very people we vote in, and we're stupid enough to actually vote for these politicians to become prime ministers and presidents around the world. My question nowadays is why? Why should we? Why should we vote for people like that who are, you know, part of this Zionist program called Israel? What's been going on since well before it was actually created? I mean, God's sake, even during the war, they were plotting and planning with that, and they were plotting and planning before the war, all about the same thing, the Greater Israel, as they called it. And they produced a map all over the Middle East. It just said Greater Israel across all over the Middle East. No countries on it, not split up into any countries, just the Middle East. One big, call it what you like, pancake, call it a chapati, call it what you like. One big thing with no countries on it. And it just said across it, Greater Israel. Yeah. The very first map that was produced was a one-off. And that wasn't even the 1800s. That was the very late 1700s. Seriously. One map, the very first one of the Greater Israel, the late 1700s. Can't remember a man's name. Him and 3 or 4 of his very rich friends produced it. They had a few meetings about it way back in the late 1700s, and then it's just all forgotten about until the late 1800s when Theodore Herzl came along and he revived the idea. Then he died in 1904, so you cannot blame him for the Holocaust of the 20th century or for this today. As I've always said, once he died, and he was a very ill man anyway, he suffered from manic depression, and that is recorded in history. And he had a heart defect, and it was a heart defect that killed him in 1904. And after he died, his World Zionist Congress was taken over. I call that the asylum, simply because they reckon, this is recorded in history, history believes that the only reason he wanted another homeland was something to do with his manic depression. It came out of mania. This is what's recorded in history. Of course, the Zionists won't have that. They won't say that, but this is what's recorded in history by historians who are not Zionists, and they are not anything. They're not against anybody, and they're not for anybody. They're just historians, okay? So this is what they've got in history. Because of his mania, through his manic depression, he didn't get any medications for things like that in those days. He had to just go mad with it, you know what I mean? If you were ill like that, you just had to go mad. And after he died in 1904 anyway, the lunatics took over the asylum. And the Zionist Congress has still survives today over in Israel, obviously. The lunatics did take over that asylum. And because all the Jews said no to him while he was alive, he popped two questions. Would you like a new homeland? They all said no. Would you like to become Zionists? They all said no. So the lunatics, once he died, did take over the asylum. And they started plotting and planning against the very Jewish people all around the world that all said no. And the largest population of Jewish people in the world at the time was in Germany. Because a lot of Jewish people would go from their homeland over to other countries in Europe, and they were always getting picked on in those countries by governments and what have you. So they moved across Europe into Germany because the German Jews had been living there since the 1400s, the reign of the Franks, and that was the very last royal family that the Germans had. The Germans, like everybody else, like Russians and everybody else, and like the Conservative Party of Great Britain, murdered their own royal family. That happened in most countries because most royal families were bastards. And the Tories are just as much bastards as the royal family they wiped out 300 years ago and replaced them with a fake royal family, the Windsors, which, you know, are German, strangely enough, originally from Germany, their ancestors. So no, they're not English. So what was I saying anyway? Oh yeah, back to the most important thing I was talking about in the first place. Yeah, it'd be good if people could put something on their tree to remind people that walk in and see the tree, you know, that are going to definitely clock whatever it is you put on to remind them of Gaza. That way people don't forget about those poor souls on Christmas Day. While people here in the West are having a lovely time eating their usual, you know, run of the mill Christmas dinner. It's cheap at turkey out of whatever, you know, out of Asda or whatever. I wouldn't do that. If you're going to buy a turkey or a chicken anywhere, get and you're not going to go to a butcher's, go to Aldi. If you're in Britain, obviously, if you're anywhere, go to Aldi actually, because in Britain they sell the cleanest chickens and trusted chickens, very trusted. I mean, in supermarkets, you don't know where they came from. You don't know what's, you know, and I say it for a particularly good reason. Yeah. I really do. Not just a salmonella, but botulinum also. Yeah, yeah. They do the cleanest ones anyway, but it's up to people what they want to do. If they want to buy a shit chicken, or Tesco's later, you know what I mean? But while people are sitting down eating that anyway, people of Gaza and their children will be getting bombed. Not anybody's fault. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. It's the Zionists to blame. The Zionists' bloody fault. It's not our fault. But it would be good if people could remember them on Christmas Day. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. To tell up to everybody what they do, but it's just an idea. It's just a thought being passed through YouTube, and I've already passed it through Facebook and TikTok. Just a shame we didn't have the power to stop those bastards from doing what they're doing. Yeah. Sorry, us sitting here, comfortably and safely, posting things on social media. Me doing a stupid video. But none of it is. You know what I mean? You hear people saying, "Oh well, all this helps." It doesn't help them because it doesn't matter what we do or how many flags we wave, and on the streets anywhere. That's not going to change the Zionist government's minds that we have today. Because this program's been going on since the 1940s. The Zionist program, the Zionist endeavour. And, it's always been the case that at some point the Gaza people, the people of Palestine as a whole, were going to cease to exist. Or at least cease to exist in Palestine. But it seems, nobody wants to let them escape. Whether it be the West Bank, whether it be Gaza. They're all in Gaza. They're never going to be allowed to leave Gaza. The only way they can leave Gaza is by the ocean. And you can't. You just drown. People's tried to swim before from Gaza over to Cyprus. It's too far away. Quite a few people's drowned over a year's time. That one, you can't do it. Even for the strongest swimmers, you cannot fucking do it. It's too far away. I've heard of that before, many a time over the years. And the last time I heard, the last person that done it was 4 years ago. It was about 2017 or something. No, you can't do it. There's no way they're going to get in Egypt. It's either the sea or Egypt. And neither's Egypt would be viable if Egypt would let them in. They've got tons of land there. Fuck's sake. Tons of land that nobody lives on, apart from pyramids and ghosts. True. Jordan. I mean, I don't see what. I mean, if they want rid of those people, why don't they move them, drive them in buses through the West Bank and into Jordan? I mean, the Jordanian government doesn't want them either. And yet Jordan's got tons and tons and tons of vacant land sitting there doing nothing. But because they don't want, as a government, a responsibility of them. Egyptians are the same. There's nothing wrong with having Palestinian people in your country. Palestinian people aren't going to do your country any harm. How the hell? If I was Prime Minister of Britain, I would have spoke to this clown across the water ages ago. Yeah, these people wouldn't be getting bombed right now. No. Scotland, we do have to build up our population. We do. So, those 2 million people in Gaza would fit very nicely into Scotland. And obviously, if I was a Prime Minister, I'd be giving Scotland extra money to fund that. That way, the English wouldn't be able to complain. The usual Union Jack Jacksons. That's what I would have done. But because as a British government, you do have a lot of clout over there. Because if it wasn't for the British Home Office in the first place, that over there wouldn't fucking exist. And that was Winston Churchill used to shout out, "We need we need somewhere over there," basically. And that was it. When Theodore Herzl came along, that was a perfect excuse to get a British outpost over there. That is a British outpost. And since roughly about the 1700s, there was always some British soldiers, some British presence over there in Palestine. They were always hanging about like a bad smell, in the name of peacekeeping between the Palestinians and the Jewish people. And the Palestinians and the Jewish people never argued or fought or anything. They got on like they were like that. They got on like a house on fire. That's a pity people couldn't get on with each other the way they did. But Zionists had to fuck it all up, man. What they do with everything. Everything that is good and nice and tidy and clean and humane and loving and caring, the Zionists always want to fuck it all up. Very true. Anyway, I'm out of here. Jesus. Said enough.